Hello, Brisbane, from Michael Trout. I am the founder of DANOs, Distributive Autonomous Nonprofit Organizations, the Foundup, and the whole idea of the next iteration of capitalism 2.0, simply called social capitalism. I'm here in Florida with my kids, and I can't be in Brisbane to participate in this amazing Blockconscious event that's taking place August 10th. So I want to do a shout out to all you folks. I know I've got friends there. Michael's there. I can't even Michael's last name. Greens. He's got green hair. Now you all know who he is. I just want you to be thinking about what's the purpose of the blockchain. Decentralization is just an outcome. Keep that in mind. And the whole point of the blockchain is to usher in social capitalism. What is social capitalism? It's very similar to social media. It's corporations, entities, and really not corporations anymore on the blockchain. They're DANOs, Decentralized Autonomous Nonprofit Organizations. DANOs, transforming our current selfish capitalism system into a selfish capitalism, selfish to selfless capitalism system, where 100% of the net profits goes back into launching more DANOs as Foundups. So Foundups scale up and become DANOs that become autonomously driven through something known as OBEY, Open Beneficial AI, which means it obeys us, not obeys them, not obeys corporation, it obeys us as the global community. It is open beneficial AI. And think of it as a kind of a protective shell. Imagine in the future you've got this AI that's actually protecting our personal information data. It's autonomously searching the dark web. It's alerting us. It's taking actions to protect our data, allowing us to sell our data if we want to. It manages everything. OBEY, right? It obeys us. Or my fun name for it is the Noodle. So the good news is this, and this is my big news to you guys that in Brisbane, is social capitalism can't be stopped. Capitalism 2.0 is capitalism for the people, by the people, not by the 1% for the benefit of the 1%, right? Not by the few for the detriment of our planet. You see, unlike the current model of capitalism, which is built on CAGR, and CAGR is compounded annual growth rate, or in blockchain terms, proof of ROI. When I took the idea of what you call the blockchain, which in fact is erroneously named, it's really the open innovation framework built on the blockchain, which was called Ethereum, to the founders of Bitcoin magazine back in 2011, the purpose was one thing, is to save our planet from an insane idea of exponential growth on finite resources. You cannot have infinite growth on finite resources. There's only so much tea you can drink from the Japanese tea ceremony before that cup's empty. Think of that liquid as our resources. And the amount of resources consumed in 2010 was equivalent to 30 planets worth of resources, right? By 2030, 2025, 2030, it's going to be 120 planets, only because, you see, the blockchain, or the open innovation framework, not built on CAGR, or built on CAGR, has created you think of it as a Pandora's box. And we've created all this new wealth, which means all this new consumption of resources, which means this, this hyper growth. You can think of it this way: in the past, startups were limited to about $60 billion of resources of money every year to invest, and that's why there was a cap of how many startups launched globally. Well, because of the open innovation framework, the blockchain, as you call it, now that paradigm has completely had its lid blown off, and it's become this Pandora box where ultimately there is an infinite number of money, pretty much, that can be leveraged to launching startups. Put another way, before we had a cap of only so many exchanges. Now we have an infinite number of potential exchanges. Before we had a cap of so many hedge funds. Now we potentially have an infinite number of hedge funds, right? Because they're all built on the blockchain. Anyone can launch a hedge fund. Anyone can launch and raise money for these projects. So it means that we have exponentially sped up the consumption of our limited resources in an exponential way, because you see, the point of the Open Innovation Framework is to remove CAGR and replace it with CABR. That's right. The point is to replace CAGR with CABR, which is compounded annual benefit rate. So Foundups ultimately exist on the whole idea of proof of benefit, right? Proof of benefit. What does that mean? What does proof of benefit mean? Well, imagine the valuation of all the projects out there isn't based on basically hype. It isn't based on the idea of expectations, but actually based on tangible things. Like, how is this thing benefiting the planet? Right? How is it benefiting the living systems? And how is it benefiting the people around me? By sharing the wealth and so on, right? So in the future, the valuation of danos are going to be done on in such a way that the noodle or obey will have the ability, simply by looking at what is this thing doing, what is the impact of this thing, right? This deep learning, deep information, this data gathering, and be able to set the valuation of Foundups. And these Foundups level up and become danos. And danos turn around and become autonomous and reinvest 100% of the net profits back into the system. Well, once we have our first dano, it's game over. Because think of Facebook could be a dano, Google could be a dano, anything could be a dano. It doesn't have to be a dano. Is just saying it's not a nonprofit, it isn't a for-profit, it's a dano. It's the next evolution of entity, right? It just happens to be called a decentralized autonomous nonprofit organization, meaning that we take the 100% of the net profits as agreed on by the community of those that are participating in this dano, right? All these things are determined by the community. And I have other talks talking about danos, but in essence, danos don't have a board of directors. The board of directors is the noodle, right? The danos doesn't have managers or anything else. They have participants. Participants have roles, and the role may be of kind of a manager or doing a specific function, but ultimately, again, think of them as really, I look at participants no different than the panhandler on the side of the street saying, hey, give me money. The only difference is, instead of the panhandler sitting there and just saying, give me money, the participant is actually actively participating and doing something with their Foundup. They're solving a problem. A Foundup focuses on solving a problem, right? What's the pain? What's the solution? And what's my perceived outcome? And if that pain, solution, outcome has a positive impact and has a specific growth that qualifies it to be a dano, right? Which means it's profitable and everything else, then all of a sudden it's going to launch and fund hundreds of new Foundups, which, let's say 1% become a dano, and so on and so on and so on. This is called hyper exponential growth. So the good news is, for you guys in Brisbane, I'd love you guys to discuss the whole idea of danos, decentralized autonomous nonprofit organizations. I'd love for you guys to discuss the whole idea of social capitalism. What does it mean? It isn't socialism. It isn't communism, because the entire movement is driven by entities, which are organizations, and not driven by taxing individuals. These organizations are the ones that are going to give, for example, what the Tesla guy, whatever his name is, can't think of his name right now. You know who I'm talking about, right? He wants this universal benefit income, right, for folks. It is these organizations that's going to bring this about. Food for thought. My name is Mike Trout. Good luck with your event. I am dedicating unXXX to the block consciousness. If you have a video that you want to talk about, you can't make it to the event, you can go to unXXX, post it, share it with on our community, and I'll link it up there. Great.